All right, this is the first stream. I'm just going to tag everyone that wanted to be notified. What we're going to do is look at building, let's call it an asset, a domain from scratch. A couple different topics we're going to tackle. Trying to figure out what's going on here. Yeah, the biggest one being today strategy and picking the first cluster, including keyword research. And the domain we're gonna look at is a completely new domain. I bought this domain, love letter examples, exact match domain for a keyword. And why I'm doing this one is essentially, I did videos before with like one of our real projects, and those led to essentially some copy paste competitors, copycats. And I decided to, not share as much there, but maybe just share doing this from scratch so everybody can follow along. Just recently hit what is it, 65,000 in the last 25 days for this one, bridesmaidfire.com. And then this one was what I was showing, which is a new asset. It's completely new, 2 months old, a bit more maybe. But yeah, so this is what I've been up to, and I'm gonna basically replicate more or less what I did here, but then with some tweaks maybe for this one. And I talked to Flavio, which is one of our partners for SwiftBrief, about this, and he gave me the example. He gave me the idea to look at this space because he said that his wife posted like a love letter online at some point, like a long time ago, and then it ended up being picked up by a bunch of other people. As an example, people acting like it was their own or whatever. So I thought it was just a very interesting space, and I don't really think I will monetize this. Like, I don't think there's like, anything I want to build here that I see as some sort of cash flowing asset for the next 10 years. So it's just like a fun space to look into, not really super important or anything. And what I've noticed while looking at this, and we're going to walk through this together, is that there's actually not, it's not that competitive, especially the long tail, which gives us a chance to rank. And it's also not very little, like it's decent search volume, right? So something like a love letter has 40,000 searches, and I guess it's probably something that is gonna be searched for more as people forget how to write and express their thoughts properly. So I think, overall was interesting. I think what I'm going to build is a generator. So essentially, again, like the other thing that we have is a eulogy generator. So it generates eulogies. We can just build something that generates love letters. And ideally, I wanted to get lovelettergenerator.com because that makes more sense. But I think if we go to Namecheap and we search, I think it's already taken. I also tried AI love letter generator. I think that one is available, but it was like 2K or something. Yeah, so it's 1,700 euro, which, for a kind of fun side project seems a bit extra to me. So I didn't do it. But ideally, and this is maybe the first takeaway here, is you want an exact match domain if possible. But you can also look into contextually match domains. So essentially, if I want to rank for a love letter generator, but I get like maker or something, which is actually available. So nobody will talk like that, right? Like nobody will look for a maker, but I think without AI, we can look at that in keyword research, and then hopefully, if we decide to buy it, after all, it's not going to be taken by someone watching this. But I don't think I'm that popular, so I don't think so. But yeah, so essentially, this is a very niche thing, which makes it easier to rank, right? So essentially, what you always need to look at when it comes to SEO is supply and demand, which is, makes all sense. It's just basic market forces, right? Where how many people are in the space supplying content, and then how many people are actually pulling, and wanting to look at that content. Sounds simple enough, and I think that is what a lot of people, I wouldn't say they forget it, but I think a common mantra is like, okay, look for low KD and high volume, right? Which isn't necessarily wrong, but I think one thing we should also keep in mind, especially if we're looking to sell some sort of product, is the goal of conversion and revenue. So you will have some sort of component that you are going to monetize, right? So that component is essentially, for this, it might be the generator thing, right, that I was talking about. And I was just reading some comments on Twitter. That is supposed to make us revenue, right? Like, why else are we building this? We can monetize this with ads. We could, but this is going to be a SaaS, right? So I don't know if anyone's going to pay for it, honestly. I wouldn't, probably, but you never know what people end up paying money for. But so I decided for ads, we need more volume. I think it's feasible down the line, but for SaaS, we don't necessarily need a lot of volume. We just need people, willing to spend money. So it needs to be enough of pain for them, which we've learned with, for example, the wedding speeches and the eulogies, that people are in fact willing to spend money just to get it solved properly. It could be another type of situation here with like a love letter, you expressing love to someone or whatever. That is also very important to you to get it right. Which is why you're looking for examples in the first place, right? Like, you want to get inspired, you want to not make mistakes. And so there is a point to be made that maybe someone will pay money for this. But again, that's not the primary exercise we're doing here. It's more on, getting traction, getting rankings. But for you as an owner of a SaaS, that is something you shouldn't forget. And then that brings us to the point that I was trying to make before I went on rambling, is like, how does this fit? How does this keyword fit into your monetization strategy? I can try to rank for online casinos, but if I sell a SaaS for a church, then obviously the relevancy is like super, super low. And even if I get volume, and even if I get people in the door, they're never going to convert. Like, why would they, right? It doesn't make sense. And it's also very unlikely that you'll ever rank for that unless you're super authoritative as a domain, and basically you can publish whatever content you want and Google's still just going to gobble it up. Or you are essentially just wasting time, because Google understands if you are good at making content, Google will understand like what your domain is about and what you're doing. And if you're going too far outside that scope, it's just not gonna rank, right? Which makes sense. So that's something you should pay attention to as well. And for the first cluster, I think this is the most important. Like, we're going to pick the first cluster in a second. It's like how close is that to what you're offering? So if it's a SaaS tool that makes, whatever, it's like a video editor, then that will be your first cluster, right? So you will go in and you say, like, oh, I have video editor, and then I have, this will be my homepage, and I have like how to edit video. This will be a guide, and this is essentially your homepage, but at the same time, it's a bottom of the funnel page, right? We call that BOFU, which is essentially a conversion page for your tool. So people look at it, they sign up, it shows the features, it shows testimonials, it shows use cases, whatever you decide goes on there. And then you have the guide next to it. So some information for people looking for extra information to figure out like how do they even edit video. These will usually have quite high volume compared to this, but they will not convert as well. And then you maybe have something like best video editors or something, right? Which is a roundup, which compares different video editors with each other. So this could be for a video editor, like your first cluster, for example, right? However, on here, let me actually share this on Twitter. Just a link to the board so people can just follow along, whoever wants. Working back from what I said initially, so this is like a love letter generator, right? But that is essentially because we have examples as the domain. I'll focus on examples because if I start ranking for examples, but then what people see when they open the page is a generator, it's not too far off, but at the same time, it's not what they're looking for, right? So they're going to be confused. They're not going to be well served when it comes to intent. So essentially, before we do a generator, what we want to do is like love letter examples, right? That could be the cluster, but I think that's still not the root. That could be like love letter or something, right? So essentially what we can then do is we can go in and we can say, hey, love letter, how to write a love letter, something like this, right? So this essentially is a guide, and the examples lives underneath there, which is like, okay, these are examples of love letters. And then we probably will just do this as a bottom of funnel page. Or maybe what we can also do is we can use an iframe or whatever to essentially have on the main page that will just be, can I draw on this shit? Here. Will essentially just be a landing page with a header and then love letter examples. I don't know, some search bar or something. So these are some examples. And then maybe we have fucking trackpad is horrible for writing. I need to get something else. I can just use this. I don't know, categories or something. So different groupings, right? I think that's what makes the most sense. And that's not actually what we're doing for the other ones. But I think here, like we should just try it out, see what happens. And then I'm probably going to have some blog posts, listicles or whatever that go into deeper topics here, which are at the same time also categories. So these just show examples, and then those blog posts, they will have more text on them, which will usually be something like, Let's look at the keyword research actually. So under here, for love letter examples, we can see 3,600 volume for that. However, the keyword difficulty is low, but what I can see here is that the DR is actually quite high. So for the people on the first page, which makes me think that if we look for it, it will be not like niche domains. It will more be like, generic, bigger sites that rank for that as, like their 50th priority or something. Maybe we should just have a look. But now I'm going in, I'm seeing byteexpress.com. Okay. So I'm just doing some competitor research. Love to know. Okay, what is this blog? Yeah, so there's like a general kind of content site with a bunch of different topics. This being one of them, under live relationship dating wordsmith. Okay. They are using a blog post as well with some more text. This is what I mentioned up earlier, right? So they have a list of different examples. We'll create something very similar, but we'll make it a lot more comprehensive, because it's the only thing we're targeting, right? So we can take the time to make it a lot more comprehensive. We have downloadable templates for this, which is also interesting. We could do something similar. I'll probably just generate images with something like Banner Bear or something down the line for them to have some sort of infographics in there. We have Reddit, always a classic. And this is like local, right? So this is me right now. What we would want to look is usually, maybe do this without something like SERPer, which gives us the US SERP for it. SERPproof also gives it to us, by the way. But I'm just going to show you how that looks like, what I'm looking for. So now we can see Quora. So there might also be a way for us to write responses on Quora with the examples that we generate to tap into that existing search traffic. Pinterest, which is also interesting. It's going to be something I'll do later. A automation similar to what I've done for the eulogy generator to just post examples to Pinterest with some sort of prompt. And to go back to the keyword research, I'm thinking like we'll definitely going to try to rank for that, but it's probably not going to be super simple. And it's going to be more of a long-term bet. But let's see, what exists here in terms of anything that is low authority for us to get started, because in the beginning we're going to be zero, right? Like we don't have any authority. We have a bit of a leg up because we have the exact match domain, but it's only going to get us this far. And ideally what we're going to be looking for is like low authority with some traffic. So there is something on here that is somewhat low authority but still gets traffic, which, for example, this one, which is like love letter examples to myself. Interesting. 20 search volume, not super popular, but might be something interesting for us to get some initial traction at least, right? So what that would look like is I would make a blog post, love letter examples to myself, something like that. And then what else do we have here? Victorian love letter examples. So that might be another page, right? Again, they're not the ones we want to go for necessarily. But we'll start there. We need to find a niche that will let us rank without going against like giants like Quora or something. And the more niche we can get, the better, which isn't someone else in here, which isn't necessarily, might not even be these ones. There might even be more niche topics. Christmas love letter, dirty love letter. Okay, but here we're already getting into like somewhat competitive territory, but they all still have like 0 KD, right? So it shouldn't be impossible for us here to rank. But yeah, so that will be the first cluster. And then if we can get that to work, starting with these ones here at the bottom, and that, how would that look in categories? Essentially, we have a Victorian category or something here, right? I think that was it. So we would have category for this, and we would have love letter. I don't know. Essentially, just draw up a category, and over time, these will get more and more, right? Until we have enough, and then each of these are going to be a page that has as the header let's stick to this. This will be the header. So the target keyword will be the H1, and then underneath there's going to be the examples again, right? So then here we just have examples. Which are going to be AI generated. And the thing with AI is essentially what we can do is we can get as niche as we want. You could do that before too, right? With, yeah, I mean, before AI was a thing, or as easy to use as it is now. And we can create a bunch of combinations of, let's say, different modifiers. So for example, this isn't kind of the end of the stack here, right? We would go and we could be, do something like this where we add modifiers like emotional Victorian love letters, or I don't know, funny Victorian. Let's see if there's any sort of search volume for funny love letter and emotional love letter, or any sort of modifier, because these aren't necessarily these are not the only ones, right? But we can slice and dice and combine these together, which is essentially the whole point of programmatic SEO, right? To create a bunch of pages that are very, very hyper specific, and they target the long tail. So they target like long combinations, and this could be one of them, right? And we can do that for each of these. So essentially, we can always take this template and then just say emotional, or let's say we do short. What happened here now? Huh? Okay. Short might actually be a good one. We can look into in a second. So essentially, like using some, why is this so fucked? Using some common sense and thinking about, as a user looking for something like this, like what would help me answer my question? What would help me find the answer, and what would I be looking for? You know, like a short one. Do I want to write a quick note, or do I want to write like 50 pages? Do I want to write a book? You know, it's the love letter supposed to be a book. That's a big difference, right? So just thinking about, if I was searching for this, what would I be looking for? And again, you can also, or not really again, but you can also always use Google. Love letter examples, And then that gives us suggestions as well, right? So real estate. I don't know why that would be a thing, but essentially from top to bottom, this gives us suggestions like what real people are looking for and the words that they use. Let's look at real estate. Home buyer love letter. Okay, so I guess that's something I didn't know, that there's something like a real estate love letter that you can write to someone so that they accept your okay, so I guess it's a bit of a let's ask Claude what they think about this. What are real estate love letters? Just want to know what the hell it is. Nice. Sounds pretty crazy that you have to do that. Doesn't speak for a well-balanced housing market. What is this? Concise. Okay, so Claude won't let us write it, which means we're probably gonna have trouble creating them, which means I'm probably gonna just ignore them for now. But it's interesting to to know that it exists. Let's continue here to see if we find more. Any sort of other types that we can use. Apology. Future self. So self love letters. Oh, Jesus. Someone looking for examples. What keywords? Just trying to get some more keyword ideas to see if we can find more examples that we are not covering. Love letter, passionate, vintage. Okay, let's see. Maybe vintage love letter. Something like this. Cute love letter examples. Okay, this one is done. So now we can see funny love letter. It's actually not super bad in terms of search. So what we can do with that is we can throw that here under how to write a love letter. We can include something like how to write a funny love letter. So then we can make a guide on that, or we can make how to write a emotional love letter. I don't know, something like that, right? So we can make guides that are similar to this one. How do you actually write a love letter? Just walking you through from some other angle, because with a funny love letter, for example, you want to, the whole thing shouldn't come over like a joke. So there's other considerations of like which humor is good, which humor is bad, like what should you do, what should you avoid, which we won't necessarily cover in the top one, because for a love letter, it's not primary consideration that it's like funny or something. It's probably a special type of person, that is like, okay, I know this humor and I should be using this humor which is something the generator could help with, right? Like it could ask essentially like, hey, I'm looking to write a love letter and I share this specific type of humor. I don't know, like we're often sarcastic or something. And then that can be part of the tool itself to get that out. And it gives the user a way to make it more specific to what they're doing, right? And then what we can also do, so we're still like in the first cluster, right? So this is all the stuff that we're gonna cover in the first cluster. And what we're gonna do in the next session, I have half an hour left, but I'm not gonna do that now. What we're gonna do in the next session is essentially producing content. Maybe we can do one content piece to just see an example how that looks like. Let's just do this one. So this is a guide, right? Funny love letter. We'll let the system pick, and SwiftBrief is now going to just go ahead and create a brief, and on top of the brief we can create content, which is the first thing we're going to publish on the blog. It's just going to be a bunch of guides, but we'll do that next time. I just want to show you how that looks like. And back to this. So here we can then also, this is a Bofa page. We can then also create different generator pages, which are then landing pages, individual landing pages, which are also using those modifiers or prefixes or whatever, right? So if I have a funny Victorian love letters, why don't I have funny love letter generator or even like funny Victorian love letter generator, right? It's all hypothetical. It doesn't always make sense because there's probably zero search volume for this. But again, it's like almost at no cost for us that we can create these landing pages because they just follow a template, right? And for the person searching, if there is anyone searching, it will just be a better user experience because they literally self-selected that that's what they're looking for, right? They are looking for something that writes them a funny letter, but not just a funny letter, but like a Victorian love letter, which I don't even know what the fuck that is, but let's have a look. All right, so it's old shit, which I was already expecting. But yeah, so now from one topic up here, we essentially, via thinking about user experience and different things that we can find, plus looking at, let's say, SwiftBrief and what it throws out, plus like Google and all that stuff. Actually, I wanted to add the real estate just for shits and giggles. And essentially, this is like the first step. And a lot of people skip this and then they produce content without any sort of strategy behind it. And they wonder why it doesn't rank, just because it's like, you don't want to spray and pray different clusters, and you want to understand how the user thinks, and you want to also understand what's actually feasible for you to tackle, because I can tackle content marketing with a new domain because it's just way too competitive, right? So even this, or not these, but even this is like too competitive for a new domain, even though we have and we're going to try and we're going to see, what happens. That's at least what I'm thinking at a glance from like the research that we've done. Okay, let's see. Funny love letter. This is still generating. And then once we have one cluster, everything very like tight knit, everything around the homepage, we can start branching out into other clusters. Let's say love letter quotes. I guess this is kind of here. But for me, I mean, this is still the same cluster in terms of like love letter, but it's different than the beef of the love letter. It's like a part of it, or love letter jokes. And then within each of these, we can again go in and we can say like, hey, and we can use SwiftBrief for that to just show you what it's going to produce. We can say, hey, give me ideas, because what it's going to do is going to do the research for this specific keyword, like the exact match keyword, but it's also going to give us suggestions similar to what Google is doing, and it's going to group it, which is called clustering. So it's going to group it together by page, because often if you're dealing with synonyms, and if you looked at a keyword report before, like one page will rank for, let's say, 150 keywords, right? So essentially, a lot of keywords, they go on the same page rather than being different pages. And here, I also put love poems, which that is, I think, a completely different cluster, right? Because it's like love letter, and then these are still parts of the love letter, so they contextually belong together. Same like these jokes or whatever. But love poems are then a completely different type. So these are actually another cluster. And then you have the same, right? Like love poem jokes, love poem quotes, and love poem examples, and a love poem generator, right? So, and again, like we can branch out into all this stuff, which I'm not going to do. But if I were able to get traction on this cluster, and if I'm starting to rank here, and I'm starting to hit diminishing returns, so I can continue to produce more content, but it's not going to really move the needle, I can either move on to a different marketing channel. So I can try to layer on, let's say, Pinterest and like the automation I was talking about, or I can just go in and I can tackle the next cluster, depending on what your priorities are and what you think, because if I don't have this tool, if I can't monetize it, and my goal is to monetize this, then it makes more sense to try to drive more traffic here with Pinterest. So like layering on a different marketing channel, because this is like not relevant. I mean, it is relevant, but it's more relevant and people are more likely to convert if they are looking for love letters than if they are looking for poems. And then I'm going in and I say like, hey, by the way, if you're looking for a poem, you might also find these letters interesting. Because if you're looking for a poem, chances are that you have someone you could also write a love letter for, but it is more of a stretch, I think. And then this is cluster by cluster how you expand, and you can always add more clusters, but you will most likely make a trade-off between the cluster and the relevancy, right? So I don't know, number, clusters, and relevancy. So there will be how do I do this here? Wait, I need to figure out what I'm trying to say. Is it like this? No. Essentially, I guess it would be maybe I should do the other way around. Should do relevancy and number of clusters. Essentially, you will end up with something that's not irrelevant. You can do more clusters, but only a couple of clusters will be relevant, and then a lot of them won't be. And it will give you more volume. And if you're doing ads, that might be fine. But if you're trying to sell SaaS, then obviously the more relevant you can stay, the better. So it's number of clusters, essentially high relevant, and that goes down. So the more clusters, the next cluster will be less relevant, but you can always do more. And at some point, you're probably going to stop ranking anyway. So it's a matter of like resources, right? Like that's why big outlets or big SaaS tools, they can, let's see, online casino. So, for example, here, it's like, I guess it's a ClickUp doc, so it's not necessarily their content, but someone made a casino review on ClickUp, which is like nobody's going to buy ClickUp, and it's not ClickUp who did it, so it doesn't matter. But nobody's going to buy ClickUp just because there's some casino review, right? I guess it's just some growth hacker trying to do something similar to what people are doing with LinkedIn or Reddit these days, where it's like, it's called parasite SEO, which is you're trying to use existing authoritative domains, usually like social stuff, to rank your stuff on top. I think we're currently trying something like that with Google Docs or something. But yeah, I don't really believe in these kind of growth hack things. I think they're usually very short-lived, but yeah, if you spend a lot of time, figuring out these kind of short-term hacks, just be aware that they usually stop working after a while, but it can be worth it. So I don't want to say flat out that it's not worth it. But yeah, so let's see what SwiftBrief has brought up here. Love letter quotes. What else do I want to tackle? And this is how you get millions of fucking tabs, by the way. Love letter jokes. Okay, so let's throw in love letter jokes. Oh. Just checking in on the comments. While we wait. All right, so I guess nobody really watching this anyway. All by myself. All right, let's see. So real estate love letter. Not bad. But again, not gonna do it. I mean, this stage is really about, discovering as much as possible and then making a choice what you're going to go after and what you're going to ignore. And there's no you don't have to shut things down before you don't have a full picture. So it's best to get as much as possible on here. Let's see, love letter quotes. Love quotes. Romantic quotes. Love letter captions from Instagram. All right. So a similar thing here where DR is quite high, but not bad. Love letter starting lines. This could be an ending. Short love letter quotes. So these are, interesting. Giving us some ideas what else we can go after. Jokes doesn't seem to be very popular. This is more or less a rephrase of funny love letters. So it's not that helpful either. Let's see what we have in terms of brief. All right. So essentially, SwiftBrief went ahead and created a brief for us with, images, table, recap, etc. So this is essentially an outline of the article with all the headers. This is the H1, H2 table, and everything that goes in. We can see that Pinterest, I guess, is ranking number 1. Then it's Reddit. So these are essentially, and again, Pinterest. These are very very high DR domains. That's why we have this high competition, but they're not very specific. So if we can make a niche site that just covers this topic, we're going to be more of an authority than a random place that sells everything essentially. So that's something that's actually not that bad. Low letter generator. Okay. What we're going to do now is we're going to write content, because this is going to be, let's say, the first. Let's make that the first article we're going to post. And then what we're also going to do is funny love letter examples, which I don't think it was in here. Was it? It's probably not enough traffic on it, but what we can do is we can just add it here ourselves. Anything that's missing and we want to cover, we throw that in here. And we'll pull up the data for us. Also, relationship advice. All right. So if we were to tackle other clusters, we could also add something like this, or we can go for a relationship advice, which is, for example, one of those competitors that we've seen. They primarily target people in relationships and then give advice. Obviously, completely different topic. So not very likely we'll cover that. Also, we should probably be an expert in this regard. There's this concept of your money, your life, I think, with Google. So, you probably need some sort of expert to cover this. You can say you're the expert, but I think that's, a topic like this, that you do more harm than you do good with that kind of shit. All a matter of if you have a conscious on it, I guess. All right, vintage love letters is also interesting. Doesn't have a lot of traffic behind it, so not super good, but we can't be too picky in the beginning, right? It's better to target something that is relevant, even if it doesn't have a lot of traffic or volume, just to start ranking, and then using that as an anchor to essentially get people on your site and start getting signals to Google that you have good content, right? Like if people stay on your site for a long time, that means you have good content. And then driving traffic from there to your homepage or to other, more competitive, more short tail content that then also gets signals on Google that it, isn't super bad because people are looking into it. So that's how you can essentially use something that has somewhat low volume to give signals and start to build authority for those more short tail keywords. And we'll also create a brief for this. Love letter in Chinese. Okay. Love letter game cards. How to make love letter. Okay, we can also do this. All right, so essentially, next time we can publish like 4 articles, I think, per hour is not unreasonable. We probably can do more. We're also working on publishing connector for SwiftBrief so that you can directly publish. But we'll cover the short tail, and then we'll cover one cluster of long tail, which is like the funny, and maybe something like the Victorian. So different modifiers. Let's say funny as a modifier. And then I guess we should also cover this one. And then maybe something like this that is low, old love letter, buyer. I guess buyer is the same for like real estate. Dirty. Should do dirty love letters, sweet love letters, love letter to groom examples. Romantic love letters. I mean, these are all quite competitive. Where was the Victorian thing? All right, so we have one modifier that's like the style, like funny. We have one modifier that's like a time, like an era. It's like old stuff, and we have the generic ones, the short tail ones, and we have oh, interesting. So Victorian love letter generators actually has some traffic. So I think that is interesting. And I would never thought about this without like keyword research, because I'm like, why would you look into that? You know, like, but I'm not everyone. So you need to look into whatever the market is doing or like the people are doing, and not what you're doing, because your assumption is most likely going to be wrong. So this looks like a niche we can potentially own because it has 12 or 30. So that like a 12 DR on the top 10. Let's see. Victorian. What there's actually here. Okay. Right queen. Okay, so what the frick? Okay, so we see that there is competition here, but they're junk. Logicballs.com. What's going on? Gender brief. I mean, it's mostly generic websites that also use SEO to. They have a service. Okay. Meta gallery. How does it work? And this is something we could probably also do. It's just like let people pay whatever they want, because I don't think this is like worth $30 or something, but it's also not free to run the generator. So, but yeah, so competition doesn't look crazy here. But yeah, we'll have a look. That might be a cluster we can actually own somewhat fast over, let's say, funny love letter. Let's add something here. Funny love letter generator. So that gives us a couple things to work with. Holding that here for later. First cluster, first page. Love letter examples. All right, we have funny love letter. Love letter. First page. Oh. That shit. Bussin'. Right, something like this. So modifier, era, generic, and then we can go into all the other ones once we start seeing some traction. And for the setup for the app, I'm thinking either to use something like Unicorn Platform, which is from John. Need to look at it, because essentially what we're doing is a directory, but then we also want to add some text. So I need to look at if it can do that. We can do that together next time. Or something like a Next.js boilerplate for directory. Something like this. Next.js directory boilerplate. The only reason I'm thinking about doing it damn, the is expensive. Okay, what is this? Admin. And the only reason I'm thinking about doing it with this is because of the programmatic SEO. I'm not sure we can do it with this. The blog, I'll probably just run on WordPress. What I would do is Next.js and then reverse proxy /blog to some WordPress instance, just because it has the best editor from what I've seen. Plus it has, I don't know, I'm just used to working with it now, even though I never really like WordPress and there's a lot of drama going on, but I'll usually use something like Elementor. And then we can have a blog there and we can have the site built on something else, or I'll build the whole site on this. I need to think this through. But I need to essentially figure out, if we have these categories and we have these programmatically generated pages, how to do it with WordPress, because I don't know, or to do with like this one. Yeah, just something I need to think about. And then we can start, publishing some stuff next time. And then the third step would be to revisit and see the results. Obviously, also we need to sign up to Search Console. Let me write that down as well, somewhere here. Next time. GC setup. Pig stack. We could also do a blog on Notion. But yeah, I mean, the main point being that what we're building with SwiftBrief for now is just a WordPress connector or Webflow or Shopify. So in terms of blogs, I think I'll stick with that, because then it will streamline my workflow. It will just be familiar and it will be faster. But if you don't use that, just do something that lets you, at least the blog should be something you don't code by hand. It's not necessary. For a landing page, we can decide to do it by hand, or we can decide to do it with a no-code tool. I'm kind of interested for myself to create a Next.js directory type boilerplate. We actually already have a similar site, which is this one, where we have quotes on Stoicism, and then here we have the categories, and then the category has a bunch of quotes. Each of them could be another thingy, and we could essentially do that just with V0 or Claude together. Sorry, not Claude, Cursor. It's also a matter of what you think is interesting as the viewer, if anyone is actually viewing this. But yeah, we'll do that next time. And until then, hope this was useful. Hopefully someone's going to watch it afterwards and get some value out of it. Let me know in the comments. I'll post this as YouTube videos as well, maybe just snippets of it, or yeah, at least remove a lot of the rambling and the waiting up front and things like that. So yeah, let me know.